2 p.m. on the afternoon of 14th of September 1984. A man called Roy Walsh checks into the Grand Hotel. Walsh is, in fact, the IRA bomber Patrick Magee. He's about to plant a timed explosive aimed at Margaret Thatcher. Things took a turn for the worse when, in March 1979, Margaret Thatcher's close friend and advisor, Airey Neave, was killed in a car bomb attack in the House of Commons. Neave had been the architect of Thatcher's rise to the position of Conservative leader. Thatcher was devastated by the loss of her friend and advisor.
You may remember the television scenes of her receiving the news and the shock on her face and the tears that began to form. I mean, Maggie Thatcher was not a heartless sort of person. Very frequently, she was moved to tears.
Assuming power just a few weeks later, Thatcher took a hard and uncompromising line towards the IRA.
Crime is crime is crime. It is not political, it is crime.
We saw it quite clearly and simply as the reaction of Sinn Féin to the fact that they couldn't win an election in Northern Ireland.
They literally said that Britain was ungovernable. And then along came this woman who said that she was going to sort it out.
Her mission was to make Britain great again.
But she said that she was going to sort it out, and she did. She started step by step by step, doing the things that people said were impossible.
Whatever else she was, Margaret Thatcher certainly wasn't a socialist.
Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I presume this is to enable us to sweep Britain clean of socialism.
As the Tory party conference was convening, Thatcher seemed unassailable. She'd faced down the Argentine government over the Falklands invasion and won. She was in the process of dismantling the Union's stranglehold on the British coal industry.
She'd had the Falklands, which was a make or break time. She had put her job, her career, her position in history on the line for that, and against the odds had won. She was confronting the miners, and she was determined to fight in a way that previous prime ministers had simply given up the ghost and said, no, I can't do this.
And as far as observers were concerned, any threat posed by the IRA was controlled, for the present. 7 p.m, Thursday the 11th of October, 1984. The Conservative Party annual conference was in full swing in Brighton. Hundreds of the party faithful had gathered. The Grand Hotel, the social centre of the event, was totally booked out and housed most of the senior members of the cabinet. The main activity that evening revolved around the bar. Unknown to the hundreds booked into the Grand, 33-year-old Patrick Magee had planted a time bomb weeks before. Magee was an expert bomber, and this sort of device was his forte. Magee had joined the Provisional IRA at 18. He became a prolific bomb specialist, and by the end of the 1970s had already spent 2 years in prison for IRA membership. In early 1984, he was given the job to bomb Thatcher and kill the British cabinet. Magee's mission had its genesis in the showdown between Thatcher's government and the IRA, which came in 1981. IRA prisoners at Belfast's Maze prison, led by Bobby Sands, began a hunger strike aimed at securing a number of demands related to their status. The IRA considered themselves political prisoners. To Thatcher, they were common criminals.
There can be no question of political status for someone who is serving a sentence for crime.
Well, of course, the hunger strike was based on the claim that the IRA were not criminals, that they were soldiers. But if you treated them as soldiers when you met them in the street and shot them down, oh, that was a different story. They wanted to be a political movement then. They weren't soldiers anymore. So we couldn't accept that they were soldiers, quite clearly. So they had to be treated as criminals. If criminals choose to commit suicide, there are limits to what one can do to save them from it.
When it came to the hunger strike, where you had people deliberately starving themselves to death for a political cause. That was a bit of a game changer. You realise that there was a much deeper underpinning to this than many people were aware of at the time. When Bobby Sands died and there were people willing to follow him, you thought this is a different type of game than, it's not as simple as we had thought it was.
When 9 more hunger strikers were left to die, as the Republicans saw it, the seeds of revenge were planted, and the Prime Minister was moved firmly to the top of the IRA's hit list.
I think it was inevitable that Margaret Thatcher would be on the IRA's target list, because having succeeded in getting Airy Neve, she was going to be an implacable and relentless opponent of them.
On the 14th of September, Magee had checked into the Grand as a tourist. Using the name Roy Walsh, he booked for 3 days. Behind the panel of the bath in room 629, he planted a bomb made of Frangex gelignite, linked to a long delay timer taken from a video recorder. What looked like a makeshift device was, in reality, a deadly killing machine. The bomb was strategically placed in a room at the top of the building, with the aim of collapsing the entire structure when it went off. Oblivious to the deadly package secreted in room 629, the party faithful were gathering.
Party conferences back then were very different to today. It was a great part of the locking together of the grassroots of the party and the leadership.
With her address to conference just hours away, the pressure was on for her team to complete the Prime Minister's speech.
Writing Margaret Thatcher's conference speech was most traumatic and exhausting, because as the week went on and her political colleagues made brilliant speeches, she would say her speech was no good and she'd tear it up and it all had to be started again. And so tremendous tensions. And usually it went on till 4, 5, 6 in the morning before of the day it was going to be delivered.
To Robin Butler's surprise, the Prime Minister finalised her speech by 2:30.
She finished uncharacteristically early at 2:30.
But there was one final document which her advisers wanted her to look at before the morning. It was 2:54 a.m. and the bomb had exploded on the 6th floor, causing the central chimney to collapse through the heart of the building. But the Prime Minister, it appeared, had other priorities.
And she said, "I must see if Dennis is all right." Dennis was asleep in the bedroom next door. And she opened the bedroom door. The room was in darkness beyond, and we could hear the sounds of falling masonry.
There was a row of flashing blue lights along the seafront as far as the eye could see. We must have received emergency vehicles from every part of the southeast.
As Robin Butler and the Thatchers left the room, the seriousness of what happened was becoming apparent.
We looked up the corridor, and the next suite along, there was Geoffrey Howe's special branch man running at the door, trying to kick it in. And there was what looked like smoke coming out from under the door.
Butler feared the worst, that the hotel was now on fire. The Prime Minister's party was rushed under armed escort to the nearby Hove police station, then onto Lewis Police Training College for the night. It was 3:30 a.m. and the impact of the IRA bombing on Brighton was just becoming obvious.
You only had to look at what had happened to that hotel to realise that people had died. I was frankly astonished at how few people had died.
By this time, I think we knew the McLeans were dead. We knew that Roberta Wakeham was dead. I'd seen Norman Tebbit being brought out on a stretcher, ashen, covered in dust. And they were still digging for John Wakeham.
It looked like the IRA had, at the very least, brought an end to the 1984 Conservative Conference. But Thatcher had other plans.